At 9:05 on the morning of the 24th of October 1975, a switchboard operator at the Reykjavik telephone exchange put down her headset and walked out of the building. She was one of the first. She was not alone for long. By 10 in Akureyri, a fish processing plant on the north coast had lost most of its workforce. The men stood at stations designed for 2 people and tried to manage with 1. The fish kept coming. The processing slowed to a fraction. By noon in Reykjavik, the main square near the Parliament building held an estimated 25,000 women. In a country of 220,000 people, that was roughly 1 in every 4 women alive. They had not gone to work. They had not cooked. They had not looked after the children. Some of the children were at the rally. The fathers, at home and at work, were managing. Many of them were not managing well. This is Iceland, a country that on the 24th of October 1975 discovered, in the space of a single working day, exactly how much of its economy and its daily life was held up by the women who had agreed, that morning, to put it down. What follows is the account of a day that lasted 1 day and has not entirely ended since. The strike was called the Women's Day Off. The name was chosen deliberately. It was not a strike in the legal sense. The word strike carried industrial connotations that the organizers wanted to avoid. But what happened was a strike in every practical sense. The organizing began months earlier, in the summer of 1975, the United Nations International Year of Women. A coalition of women's organizations across Iceland, spanning the political spectrum, from the conservative Women's Rights Association founded in 1907 to the more radical feminist groups that had formed in the early 1970s, agreed to do something visible on a single day. The something they agreed on was to stop. On the morning of the 24th, telephone exchanges across the country lost operators. Schools lost teachers. Nurseries were unstaffed or closed. Fish processing plants, which employed large numbers of women on the production lines, ran at reduced capacity. Shops were understaffed. Offices were short. The radio and television service operated with skeleton crews. Trawler captains could not sail because the harbor radio operators, predominantly female, were at the rally. The newspapers the following morning ran photographs of the square. They also ran reports from fathers who had brought their children to work, from businesses that had closed early, from a country that had spent 1 working day looking directly at what it had been assuming for its entire history. The assumption was not unique to Iceland. Every industrialized economy in 1975 was built on the same assumption that the unpaid labor of women in the home and the underpaid labor of women in the workplace were simply part of the landscape, as natural and unquestioned as the weather. Iceland made the assumption visible by removing what it assumed. The removal took 1 day. The visibility lasted longer. The Women's Day Off did not immediately produce equality. Nothing that happens in 1 day immediately produces equality. What it produced was a specific, undeniable demonstration that had been recorded in the newspapers, on the radio, in the memory of every adult who had spent that Tuesday trying to do their ordinary life and finding it substantially harder than usual. 5 years later, in 1980, Iceland elected Vigdís Finnbogadóttir as president. She was the world's first woman to be popularly elected head of state, not appointed, not inheriting the position, not the widow of a predecessor, but voted in by direct national ballot. She won with 33.6% of the vote in a four-candidate race. Vigdís had been the director of the Reykjavik theater company. She was a single mother, she had adopted a daughter, and divorced, which her opponents raised as a disqualification and the voters dismissed. She served 4 terms, 16 years. She stepped down in 1996 at her own decision. The girls who were 10 years old in 1975, watching their mothers leave the house on the morning of the Women's Day off, were 25 when Vigdís was elected. They grew up in the 5-year interval between the day the women stopped and the day the country put a woman in the highest office it had. The interval was not long enough to transform a society. It was long enough for a generation of girls to update what they understood to be possible. What a child sees at 10 becomes, in some cases, the outer boundary of what they think to reach for at 25. In 1975 and 1980, Iceland moved that boundary in the space of 5 years in ways that a policy paper cannot replicate. The policy came anyway, and it came systematically. Iceland's approach to gender equality is not a single law. It is a layered set of policies that have been built and revised over 50 years since the Women's Day off, and that now constitute one of the most comprehensive gender equality frameworks any government has constructed. Parental leave in Iceland currently provides 9 months of paid leave, 3 months reserved for the mother, 3 for the father, and 3 to be shared as the parents choose. The father's quota was introduced in 2000. Before it existed, Icelandic fathers took an average of less than 2 weeks of leave. After it was introduced, the take-up rate among fathers reached over 90% within a few years. The policy did not persuade fathers to take leave. It made the alternative, leaving the quota unused, the active choice that required justification. The default changed. The behavior followed. Pay transparency legislation passed in 2018 requires companies and government bodies with more than 25 employees to obtain government certification that they pay men and women equally for equal work. The burden of proof sits with the employer. Companies that cannot certify face fines. The law did not close the pay gap. It made the gap measurable, and its continuation a legal liability rather than a cultural habit. Subsidized childcare is available from the age of 2 in most Icelandic municipalities. The subsidy rate varies by income. The availability does not. A woman who returns to work after parental leave does not return to a choice between her career and her child's care. She returns to a system that is already decided to make both possible at the same time. The result of 50 years of these policies, built incrementally and revised when the data showed they were not working, is that Iceland has topped the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index for 14 consecutive years as of 2024. The index measures economic participation, educational attainment, health outcomes, and political empowerment. Iceland leads in all 4. An ordinary week for an Icelandic woman in 2024 does not feel like a case study in gender policy. It feels like an ordinary week. A woman in her 30s in Reykjavik who works as an engineer earns a salary that her employer is legally required to verify is equivalent to what a male engineer at the same level earns. She took 5 months of parental leave when her second child was born. Her husband took 4 months. The children go to a subsidized nursery from the age of 2. The nursery is a 7-minute walk from her office. She does not describe her life as evidence of equality achieved. She describes it as the life she has, which is considerably less complicated than the life her mother had, and still contains complications her mother would recognize. The school run falls to her more often than to her husband. The household planning, the appointments, the birthday parties, the mental map of what needs to happen by when and for whom, sits predominantly in her head. Not because her husband refuses to carry it. Because the habit of carrying it formed before he was asked to share it and has not yet been fully redistributed. The invisible labor, the cognitive load of running a household even when the physical labor is shared, is the part of the equality project that legislation has not yet reached. It lives inside the marriage rather than inside the law. Iceland's laws are as good as any in the world. The marriage is still negotiated by the 2 people inside it. Iceland tops the gender gap index every year. It is also not equal. The pay gap in Iceland after the 2018 legislation sits at approximately 10% when controlled for occupation and hours worked. The gap before those controls is larger. The controls reveal one gap and conceal another. The gap created by the fact that the occupations women dominate pay less than the occupations men dominate, and that the hours women work are shaped by the care responsibilities that parental leave and subsidized childcare have redistributed but not eliminated. Women in Iceland are underrepresented in the highest earning corporate positions. The boardrooms of Iceland's largest companies are not 50% female. The parliament has been between 38 and 48% female through the past decade. Historically high by global standards, not yet at the parity the country claims as its aspiration. The women who are most underrepresented in Iceland's equality story are the women who are not Icelandic. Iceland's immigrant population, which has grown significantly through the past 2 decades, is employed disproportionately in the sectors cleaning, service, care work, where the pay gap is widest and the legal protections are least consistently enforced. The Gender Gap Index measures Iceland. It measures the Iceland of Icelandic women most cleanly. The country that the world studies as the model is a model with these edges, real, documented, and sitting in the footnotes of the reports that rank it first. Delegations arrive in Reykjavik from governments and organizations around the world to study the Icelandic model. They come from Scandinavia, from East Asia, from Sub-Saharan Africa, from South America and South Asia. They attend briefings, visit childcare centers, meet parliamentarians, and take notes on the parental leave system and the pay transparency law. What is harder to take home is the 50 years that came before the law. The Women's Day Off, the election of Vigdís, the slow accumulation of cultural expectation that a girl growing up in Iceland carries without knowing she carries it, the expectation that her work will be paid equally, that her partner will take his leave, that her ambition does not require justification, that the office and the nursery can coexist within the same morning. that expectation cannot be passed as legislation. It is built by repetition across generations, by mothers who did the thing, by daughters who grew up watching, by institutions that normalized what was once argued over. The argument happened in Iceland. It was loud. In 1975. It has been quieter since, which is not the same as finished. In Reykjavik, the square where 25,000 women stood in October 1975 has a different name on the map. Most people who walk through it do not know what happened there. The not knowing is part of what was achieved. When a thing becomes ordinary enough, it stops requiring commemoration. In 1975, the women of Iceland put down their work for one day, and the country watched what happened. The date was October 24, and the organizers called it Kvennaferðardagurinn, Women's Day Off, though the more literal translation, the Long Friday, never quite caught on outside Iceland. The idea had a deliberately modest premise: women would not work, paid or unpaid, for one day. To make visible exactly how much of the country's functioning depended on labor that was routinely uncounted, underpaid, or simply assumed. Estimates at the time put participation at around 90% of Icelandic women, an extraordinary figure for a single-day action, and one that meant the disruption was not symbolic in the abstract sense. It was actually structural. What happened was that the phones stopped connecting, the fish stopped being processed, the classrooms were quiet, the children were at the office, the dinners were unmade, and the square in Reykjavik filled with women who had decided that one day of being seen was worth more than another year of being assumed. The fish processing detail is not incidental. Iceland's economy in the mid-1970s ran substantially on fisheries, and fish processing was work performed overwhelmingly by women, work that, when it stopped for a day, stopped export shipments and stopped the plants outright, not metaphorically, but literally. Telephone exchanges, also staffed almost entirely by women, went quiet in the same way. Fathers who had never independently managed a full day of childcare improvised through it, some bringing children to their offices, some sending them out with bags of sweets to keep them occupied. A detail that has become part of the day's folklore precisely because it captured, in miniature, how much of the domestic labor had never been visible to the men benefiting from it, until it simply wasn't there. They went back to work the next day. They went back to the kitchens. They went back to the switchboards. They went back to the fish. But the day had been seen. And the thing about a day that has been seen is that it cannot be unseen. 5 years later, a woman was president. 14 years after that, the parental leave changed. 23 years after that, the pay transparency law. And the girls who watched their mothers walk out of the house that Tuesday morning in October grew up to be the women who built it all. Vigdís Finnbogadóttir was elected president of Iceland in 1980, becoming the first woman in the world directly elected as a head of state, a single-mother divorce, running against 3 male candidates in a country that had, 5 years earlier, watched its women disappear from ordinary life for a day and had not forgotten it. She would later say the 1975 strike had changed the country's imagination about what a woman could hold. The parental leave reform, passed in 2000, restructured leave to give fathers a dedicated, non-transferable portion of paid time off. A design choice specifically intended to normalize men as caregivers rather than leaving leave entirely optional, and by default, maternal, the pay transparency law, formally the equal pay certification requirement that took effect in 2018, made Iceland the first country to legally require companies above a certain size to prove, through independent certification, that they were paying men and women equally for equivalent work, shifting the burden of proof from individual women filing complaints to employers demonstrating compliance as a condition of operating. Iceland did not stumble into this. Its women walked off the job one October morning and made the whole country watch what happened next. What happened next took 50 years and is not finished. But on the morning it started, the switchboard operator put down her headset, stood up, and walked out into a country that was about to find out exactly what it had been taking for granted.